On today's video, we're going to cover springs, and we're going to do it in a way that we've never done before. And when we're done, you're going to learn two things about springs you never knew. More on that when we get back. Springs. There's more to them than we've ever known. There's more about springs that we don't know than we do know. We've been taught that over the years, and now it's time to learn more about springs. But before we get started, let's like, share, subscribe, and as always, comment on the videos. I want to hear feedback from you guys. I don't want to get into a keyboard war, but I'd love to hear feedback from you because it's knowledge. That's I'm a big believer in Two Minds Create a Third. I'm a big believer in the Mastermind program, so comment. Spring life is something that is very highly important to the spring. It's what creates the life of the spring, the performance of the spring. So the higher the spring life, the higher the performance, okay? The downside to spring life is it's going to be very difficult for you to know. Okay, you're going to have to create your own database to create spring life. Spring life is created when the spring is produced in the software. The software tells you the spring life and it gives you a rating. And the software recommends highly that the rating's over 80. And this is 80% of the spring must exist after a 2 million life stroke. Okay? In the racing world, I'm going to say that we're racing well below 30 on the spring life chart. We're doing this because manufacturers have found ways to decrease the manufacturing process in a spring without jeopardizing the rate or the height. But it is definitely jeopardizing the spring life, the performance of that spring. So here again, no spring manufacturer is going to tell you what the spring life is. If they do, it's probably not going to be the truth. So I don't know what to tell you guys other than we'll try to put a database and a blog on our website so you can download and create your own database for spring life based on your springs. When they were new, how many laps you have on them, how the feel is in them every night you race them. Depending on what brand you go with, they will not run very long. So spring life is a major factor in the performance of your springs and the grip that you're going to get on a slicker racetrack. Okay? Spring life is going to play highly into the next subject, feel. Feel is not as important as we put more emphasis on feel than we should, but at the end of the day, it becomes a big part of our setup outcome is how the car feels. Okay, I kind of like what Kyle Larson said, feel's not so important, either the car's going to work or the car's not. But if I'm waiting on a particular kind of feel out of my race car, I'm going to be waiting a long time. Either the car works or the car doesn't work. And his crew's good enough to give him a car that works, and he's good enough to drive it. I like that approach much better than I really like the way my car feels. Too many factors come into that to dictate how your car feels. So when judging a spring based on its feel performance, it's not the best thing in the world. But it is one of the things we're doing. So we can try to educate ourselves based on feel. Just know it's probably not the best factor in evaluating a spring. Rate is what we've been taught for years. Rate. 1 inch is a rate. And boy, if that rate is 501, we got a great spring. But in reality, rate means nothing. Rate's probably one of the only thing rate does is tell you which one's your 500 and which one's your 600. That's what rate does. When you rate a spring 1 inch, which is how we were taught to rate our springs, you're actually rating the spring in the most useless part of its travel. Okay, so it is what it is. That's how we were taught. Rate does not dictate the quality of a spring or the life of a spring. It only dictates the rate. And many companies will say the rate will never change because it's mathematical, not because it's physical. Hyperco uses a mathematical rate system, so their rate can never change. You would have to change the physical aspect of the spring in order for the rate to change, and once the spring's built, you can't do that. So rate generally doesn't change, okay? And it's generally not that important. Height in a spring is a little more important. Recently, I've heard several spring manufacturers say, oh, after you run their springs for a couple of times, you need to reset your ride height. Well, in a good spring, that is absolutely not true. Preset of a spring will set your height. After a spring's been preset, it should not change height. If it changes height, it has also changed characteristics. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's junk, but it could, okay? What it means is it's time for you to start getting new springs. If your height changes, if your springs are not preset, your height's going to change in the first few nights of running it. That just means you need to change spring companies, okay? If your height changes, it means something's wrong, and the spring's probably been around longer than it should be. But I do think it's important to measure your initial height of your spring. We do measure all of our springs in height, and currently, recently we've changed to a pound number instead of an inch number because it just makes the process faster. But it is something that we can duplicate on our equipment, and it's really, really accurate. So height is pretty important. When you get a spring, create a device or a system to measure the height. Do as good a job as you can. Height. Load is more important than rate, because you can get, and I'm going to put some charts up, but you can get to a load with various rates of springs, as you can see on this chart. And I'll link it below so you'll have this information. But as you can see, you can get to the same 3-inch load number by having different spring rates. And you can also see on this chart how the rate of the spring affects how it gets to that load. The height and the 2-inch number, or the number down before your down number. In this case, your down number was 3 inches. We went to 4, but 3-inch was our down number. Target was the 3-inch number. Next on our list is going to be something that aggravates me. It irritates me to hear people say this. I don't really understand it. So if you have knowledge, there's 2 subjects here I don't understand. So if you have knowledge on these subjects, comment. Feel free to comment. If you don't feel comfortable commenting on the video, email me and we'll keep it private. But subject number 1 that I don't understand, that also at the same time kind of irks me, is when people say, we need to rebound, we need to check these springs and rebound. We need to check the rebound rate. What the heck is rebound rate? What is this? Where does this come from? I kind of feel like maybe I understand where rebound rate in the market come from, because our springs are preset. They're preset 3 times, and on the 3rd time, on the travel up, they check the rebound rate. Okay, they check the rate. Our springs are from block. 80% of the spring travel is the tolerance. So when you check that 1 inch, you're probably not even in our range of usable range, but that's where we race. That is where we race, and that is kind of a problem, but it is the one that we have at hand. So it is kind of a problem, but that's where we race. But we check them in rebound only because it saves a little time. Now, when you go get a spring smasher and you check a spring in compression and rebound, odds are you're going to get different answer, because the device has hysteresis in it, the device has backlash in it, so you're not going to get the same answer, and you're going to think that you have a magical spring or a junk spring depending on how it rebound rates. But in reality, when we rate our springs, we've been doing them on a CNC rater, so it has 0 backlash in it, and I get 1 pound difference in the compression stroke as I do in the rebound stroke. And even if I go down and come back up, even if I stop at that point and come back up, I get 1 pound difference. So I've tried to create a different test, but I still get 1 pound. So I don't understand rebound rate. I think it's just something that we've heard somebody say, so it sounds important, so we repeat it. That's my opinion of rebound rate. The second thing that I don't understand that people say is that their springs get hot. Okay? Your spring is not getting hot from it going up and down that little bit it's going up and down on the racetrack. Now, it may be gaining heat from the headers, from the exhaust. That may be true. Brakes, heat may be coming from a source outside of the spring, but the spring compression and its ability to build rate, it dissipates energy, and heat energy is what it dissipates. But in the environment that we're racing it in, and an open wheel modified, a late model, a stock car, these springs are not generating heat. And they're not going to be one thing at the first of the race and something else at the end of the race. If your springs are actually doing that, then get them gone, find a better spring brand to run, because springs don't do that. Your springs are failing. So 2 things that I kind of battle with, those are the 2 things that I think are myth in our sport, and maybe I'm wrong. So if feel free to comment, educate us on that fact if you have something to educate us with. Grip is very important to our cars, and we have another myth that's kind of going on that soft springs create more grip. Soft springs have a function that is very good in a car if everything is done right. But for most classes across the country, we're not allowed to race in the fashion that a soft spring would perform at its highest level. So it's not legal, so we shouldn't do it. But we've stayed with the soft spring, even though we can't tie them down or load them up against themselves. That's the part that's not legal. We tend to stay on a soft spring. Okay, a soft spring can bring to the table a car's ability to function better at its current setup. All I did was put in a soft spring, and everything else the same. My car handles better. I think that's absolutely 100% true. But there's downfalls that come along with it. But in the past 2 years of racing, maybe you haven't done anything that's been as highly effective as a soft spring has been to your race car. But you need to understand why. Why is that soft spring helping perform? One reason why is because it's increased your rebound rate. It made the rebound in your car, your current rebound, better. Okay? But it brings things to the table like coil bind. Chassis hitting the racetrack. Chassis hitting the racetrack is #1 reason why a soft spring sucks. It's not good because your car cannot hit the ground and be highly effective. It just don't work. Okay, it may be better than it was with the 600 in, absolutely, but you didn't fix the problem. You didn't find the problem, fix the problem. You just put a soft spring in and you created other problems. So always find the problem and then fix it. I'm not a big advocate for soft springs, whether it's in a modified or it's in stock car or a street stock. I get where this is an improvement for a lot of people, but we need to step our programs up because spring rate makes grip. Has for years and it will for years. Okay, but we need to manage a bigger spring rate with better rebound. That's a secret. What's the two most important things that you should look for in a spring? One of them is probably going to be your download number, your overall load of the spring. And the other is going to be establishing a spring life. So how long will this spring produce a favorable situation for my car? Whether it's feel, grip, performance, really performance, but I can't have a spring that travels too fast and I can't put enough load in. If I'm hitting the racetrack, increase the rate or increase the load. And you can do it by increasing the rate, which will increase the grip, and you can maintain different loads. And as always, if you can't control it, then you need to go to your shot guy and say, help me control my rebound of my spring. If he does not know how to do it, maybe it's time to find a new shot guy. Maybe shot guys are just like the rest of us. They do what they do because it's all they know what to do. And they're learning, but they're not learning fast, they're learning slow. Okay, so they're going to work within the parameters they have given to them by the companies that they're building for. Sometimes they need to step outside of their comfort zone, which means they need to learn new stuff. It doesn't come easy. I understand this. I've done it for years, 20 years, and it didn't come easy. It didn't come quick, and nobody's out there teaching shot guys how to build shocks. So it's tough, but you need to have rebound control of your spring rate. Not such a soft spring rate that it's easier to control. It needs to go up. We're in a situation right now where we're currently over controlling our springs, which is great, but we need to increase our spring rate and we need to work on doing that. So that's what we're currently doing. Springs are a pickled mistress. Okay, there's more about it we don't know than we know. So I'm going to try to gather as much information as I can about springs. Springs are kind of like shocks. Nobody wants to tell you anything that's the truth. A spring company telling you the spring life of their spring is going to be far and few between. And in all the years I've done it, I've only gotten one answer, and he probably wouldn't have gave it to me if he knew he was giving it to me at the time. So spring life, highly important to your spring. Your load number, highly important to your car. Having spring rate that you can control with your rebound is going to give you grip in your race car. It's where we're at in the world today of racing on dirt. So I hope this helps. As always, go fast, go left. God bless you, and we'll see you the next time.